And you know what time it is? It's time for KP's Video News. KP's Video News, y'all. KP's Video News, y'all.
Yep, it's that time.
Right.
It's that time, folks. It's that time. It's time for KP's Video News. And I got a big story here, man, and that I discovered. It's about this very interesting woman by the name of Ellen Clark. And Ellen Clark, this has been like a figure, a historical black figure that has been missing out of the history books, that should be in the history books, and it definitely should be listed on the list of like black history for people in the United States. And she was a forgotten black activist, and well, an educator, and a very, very positive, strong person. And so 129 years, the black educator and activist Ellen Clark laid unsung and forgotten and unmarked grave in Altadena, Mountain View Cemetery. If people don't know about where Altadena is, Altadena is a city that's north of Pasadena, a little bit north of Pasadena, California. And for you people that's not familiar with Pasadena, California is a place where they, if you ever watched the Rose Parade on TV on the first, around the first of the year, this is the area where Altadena and Pasadena are located, in north of Los Angeles. Maybe about 25 or 30 miles north of Los Angeles. Maybe not even that far. But anyway, just giving you a general location about where Altadena is. And she was the granddaughter of a freedman who fought in the Revolutionary War and spent years traveling alone through the South to teach formerly enslaved people how to read and write, protected only by a paper passport that showed that she had no owner but herself. In 1866, she went to court to argue that law-abiding African Americans should be able to sit wherever they chose, nearly 90 years before Rosa Parks refused to move to the back of the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Few know about her accomplishments, a serious omission, because she was a precursor, showing us it's not a new thing for black women to stand their ground and to take the forefront in promoting change. Yet, until recently, no one knew when or where she had died. So solving the mystery of Clark's final resting place and marking it with the appropriate grave markings took a lot of research, and historians captivated by her courage, and at the racial reckoning ignited by George Floyd's murder. Last month, a ceremony organized by the Altadena's Historical Society on Juneteenth, a granite headstone was unveiled at the long neglected grave. And through speeches and songs, prayers and tears, those gathered remembered the fearless life of the woman who once wrote, "I think it's our duty as a people to spend our lives trying to elevate our own race." And that's cool, So Ellen Garrison, that was her maiden name, was born free in Concord, Massachusetts in 1823. But her family was well acquainted with bondage. Historians recognize her maternal grandfather, Caesar Robbins, a patriot who won his freedom by fighting against the British during the Revolutionary War. Her father, Jack Garrison, escaped his enslavers in New Jersey and ran to Concord, where he lived as a farmer and a laborer and fugitive the rest of his life. her mother, Susan Robbins Garrison, socialized with the abolitionists and transcendentals who made the Concord famous for liberal meanings, joining Ralph Waldo Emerson's wife, Lydia, and Henry David Thoreau's wife, Cynthia, as charter members of the Concord Female Anti-Slavery Society in 1837. So this is like 30 years before the Civil War. She was she was the only black member of the group. She hosted the second meeting at her home. By the time Clark was 15, she signed petitions demanding equal rights for Native Americans and being an advocate for desegregation of Massachusetts trains in Boston schools. Much of what we know about Clark comes from letters preserved at the American Missionary Association's archives at the Amistad Research Center in New Orleans and the Robbins House Concord's African American History, a nonprofit group dedicated to documenting Concord's African American anti-slavery history from the 17th to the 19th centuries. So the group established that Robbins House Museum in a simple 455 square foot home that once belonged to the Robbins family. Clark lived there as a child. In 1857, at age 34, Clark was married to John Jackson, a free farmer from Delaware. He died a few years later. She began teaching at a private school in Newport, Rhode Island, but during the Civil War, she felt a higher calling and to work with the American Missionary Association to teach former slaves to read and write throughout Virginia and Maryland while stoically enduring the daily indignities of racism. I generally walk through the streets unmolested. She says, as a matter of fact, she wrote in one letter, "It's only occasionally that I have been beaten and stoned in the street." Clark also recounted a story of a man who stepped on her dress and complained she was walking too slowly on the sidewalk. He called her the N-word and threatened to slap her in the mouth, and she told him in a very decided manner that he would not. He then passed on, and I've found one thing about people: if they attack you, be careful and stand your ground, and they will leave you alone. But if you run, they will follow you. Her courage is extremely powerful, and she had this voice and the strength to stand up to racism, even in the hostile South. That fortitude came to bear a month later when Clark wrote that she and fellow black teacher Mary Anderson were thrown, literally thrown, from the ladies' sitting room at the Baltimore train depot. This is the first time that I felt to be my duty to make any serious complaint, but an outrage has just occurred that demands attention, Clark wrote in elegant cursive, and we were injured in our persons as well as our feelings, for it was with no gentle hand, she wrote, adding, I feel the effects of it still. Clark's employer in Baltimore encouraged her to pursue a suit. He wishes to ascertain whether respectable people have rights which are to be respected, she wrote. Thus, you see, it will be a question of much importance. It will not benefit us merely as such, but it will be a stand for others. Clark and Anderson wanted the station master, Adam Schmeitzer, held accountable, saying he posed as a police officer while he dragged them out of the depot. The suit was meant as a test of the new Civil Rights Act, which had just been passed the month before. And the Civil Rights Act of 1866 made African American citizens of the United States, but it wasn't clear what that meant. Did it mean they could access a segregated waiting room, for instance? And Clark's legal action made headlines in the era when respectable women did not draw attention to themselves, and Clark was the very definition of respectable. I had no idea of the sensation it would create, Clark wrote in May 21st, 1866, and it certainly requires a great deal and a degree of moral courage to act in this manner, and I feel it's good and glorious in which I am engaged. The opponent's counsel tried unsuccessfully to get Clark and Anderson to settle out of court. We could not agree to compromise, unless we have all our rights conceded to us, Clark wrote. Then the Station Master's Council seized the upper hand by requesting a jury trial. And that legal gambit played off in two ways. Maryland's all-white juries would have been unlikely to convict, said University of Maryland's law school professor. It also resulted in Clark and Anderson being sent home to await notice of future court date. Although Clark was assaulted and assured that the authorities promised to notify us when we were wanted for testimony, the case was ultimately dismissed on July 8, 1866. The reason? Clark and Anderson never appeared on the day of the trial. They were never told when the day of the trial was, but they threw the trial out saying they didn't appear in court. Given Clark's earlier refusal to settle, the case puzzles historians. Did Clark give up? Was a notice of court sent to the wrong address, or was it intentionally withheld to deny Clark and Anderson their day in court? So far, researchers don't have an answer, and Clark doesn't mention the case again in her letters, and the news coverage of the trial ceased. When funding for her employer ended around 1870, Clark lost her teaching job, and then she just seemed to disappear. Historians have spent decades trying to piece together the lives of civil rights activists like Clark. In years past, the work was daunting, with researchers looking for newspaper obituaries and local libraries, or visiting courthouses to decipher faint and spidery handwriting of the 18th and 19th century ledgers. So she was an amazing person, man. I mean, there's a lot of stories on here, but, you know, just giving you a general idea of who she was and what she stood for. She wasn't having it. She was not having it. So I'm like, hey, okay, stand up for what you believe in. You know, don't be sitting around waiting on somebody to give you something, man. So here's another lady that's standing up. Maxine Waters calls for a federal probe into alleged executioners gang in the LA County Sheriff's Department. So Maxine Waters called for Attorney General Merrick Garland and Assistant Attorney General Kirsten Clark to conduct a federal probe into the alleged executioners gang within the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. According to the whistleblower, Deputy Gonzalez, the executioners are a group within the Compton station accused of having matching offensive tattoos and celebrating police shootings. The spokesperson for the LA Sheriff's Department claimed the letter was made up, unproven allegations which she is portraying as facts. The alleged group were first reported by the Times in 2018 after multiple deputies within the Compton station testified to having identifying tattoos. So that means the doggone spokesperson for the Sheriff's Department lied, including one who had a tattoo of a skull with a rifle and a military helmet engulfed in flames. I asked the DOJ take two immediate actions: launch an independent investigation into the existence of the executioners at the LA County Sheriff's Compton Station and within the greater LAUSD community, and launch a pattern or practice investigation into the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department for potential civil rights and constitutional violations, Maxine Waters wrote in a letter. So members of the alleged executioners were involved in the police killing of 18-year-old Andres Guardo, according to the testimony of a whistleblower deputy at the Compton station. Guardo was shot in the back 5 times by LA County Sheriff's deputies in an alleyway following a foot chase. The shooting was ruled a homicide by the Los Angeles County inquest. The gang allegedly sets illegal arrest quotas, threatens and harasses fellow deputies, and holds parties after shootings called 998 parties, which are part of a celebration that a new deputy will be inked by the gang. The killing of Andres Guardo is not the only example of the Sheriff's Department's excessive and brutal tactics in the Los Angeles community. On August 31st, 2020, the sheriff's deputies fatally shot Dijon Kizzy in South Los Angeles, and the spokesperson pushed back on the assertion. Additionally, the uses of deadly force, Congresswoman Waters' sites have been thoroughly investigated and turned over to the LA District Attorney's Office. And Representative Waters' letters also call for a broader focus on the pattern of policing associated with militant groups nationwide. So it's like, yep, Maxine Waters, get them, Max, get them, get them. So I'm telling you, man, this it's a bunch of crazy stuff going on. So I'm gonna talk on this story here. I can't remember if I did this story or not, but it's an Alabama sheriff charged. Alabama sheriff charged with stealing $29,000 of inmate money. The high-profile sheriff called his assistant from Las Vegas casino. Let me say that again. A high-profile sheriff called his assistant from a Las Vegas casino and ordered her to wire him cash stored in a jailhouse safe, according to testimony in Alabama court. The bombshell claim was made Tuesday during the trial of Limestone County Sheriff Mike Blakely, who was charged with 11 counts of theft and abuse, accused of taking $29,000 in jailhouse money over 3 years. Prosecutors claim the sheriff abused his position for personal gain by obtaining interest-free loans from the safe between 2013 and 2016. Most of the money reportedly belonged to inmates. Blakely, who has served as the county sheriff since 1983, pleaded not guilty to all charges. He is currently continuing to work as sheriff, but will be automatically removed from office if convicted. He also faces a prospect of several decades behind bars. Ramona Robinson, who previously worked as a Limestone County jail clerk, testified that she wired Blakely $500 at Palace Station in Las Vegas on November 8th. She claimed her boss requested she wire more money the following year when he returned to the same casino. Robinson told the court she did not know Blakely what he needed the funds for. I didn't ask, and he didn't tell. Lawmakers for Blakely seized on that, saying the sheriff may have needed the money for law enforcement purposes. No, he didn't. He's at the casino in Vegas on vacation, so why would he need it for law enforcement purposes? They claim it's possible to oh boy. Blakely eventually gave her 19 checks from his personal bank account to replace the inmate funds, Robinson said. However, the sheriff allegedly asked her to hold the checks for several weeks before depositing him so that his account would not be overdrawn. Prosecutors contend Blakely only stopped taking loans from the inmate's safe partway through 2016 when a sum of more than $900,000 was mysteriously deposited into his account. It's unclear where the money came from. However, Blakely was known to be a gambler and won a whopping $250,000 in Tennessee that same year. However, his attorney insinuated that his client may have won the lottery. Won it from the lottery. Oh, wow. These cats, man, they got a lot of lies and a lot of excuses. $29,000 of inmate money. And then he automatically, mysteriously deposited $900,000 into the bank, into his bank account. Okay. So, this last story here. Jayla Jackson and Imani Stanton make history as the first black women duo to win annual international summer debate competition at Harvard University. Black girls reign supreme once again. And so both girls are currently members of the Atlanta-based Harvard Diversity Project. Jackson, a 16-year-old junior at Holy Innocents Episcopal Church, and Stanton, 17, as a senior at North Atlanta High School. The Harvard Diversity Project is an initiative that was created by Harvard's award-winning debate coach and Arthur Fleming. The university decided to take on Fleming's idea to start the initiative to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion on campus in 2017. And the Harvard Debate Council hosts a residential program every summer for hundreds of talented young people from over 15 countries worldwide to come together for 2 weeks of intensive studies that lead up to the program-wide debate tournament. This year it took place virtually due to COVID-19, and Fleming's motto to the students who are part of the program is it's always bigger than debate. The achievements of this program and our scholars reveal to the world that the power of educational equity, he said. In regards to the remarkable win, we want to use our platform to show people what's possible when the playing field is leveled for those who use it the most. So these two young ladies won. They won the debate competition at Harvard University. 16-year-old and 17-year-old young black girls, smart, as old folks used to say, smart as a whip. Out there doing their thing, folks. It's KP's Video News, and I'm celebrating them right now. KP's Video News, y'all. That's right.